Hello! Eddie Brock is trying to lead a normal life and get along with his alien partner, whose endless babbling he must constantly contain, as well as his desire to bite people's heads off to satisfy his excruciating hunger. The journalist continues his work and gets an assignment from Detective Mulligan to interview the insane killer, Cletus Kasady, which will help finish the investigation. The trip to San Quentin ends with the journalist solving the case himself with the help of a symbiote, and the criminal is sentenced to death. At the convict's request, Eddie arrives at the prison a second time, but the encounter leads to a confrontation that results in Cletus obtaining the Carnage symbiote along with Brock's blood. The creature awakens and helps the murderer escape from prison, and once free, Kasady is out for revenge. 1996, California, St. Estes, home for unwanted children. Imprisoned in adjoining cells are lovers Cletus Kasady and Frances Barrison, who suffers from a mutation that is getting worse by the day. Frightened by what is happening to her, the girl spends her last night in the orphanage, and soon the orderlies burst into her cell. They put Frances in a police car by force to transfer her to a place where they study mutants like her. Broken by separation, Kasady remains behind the bars of the gloomy shelter. Young Detective Mulligan accompanies the girl, and she attacks him using her phenomenal strength. To defend himself against the furious mutant, the detective uses a firearm, and a wounded Frances flies out the open doors of the police car. A while later, she comes to her senses, having a bandaged wound and being in a bulletproof box of a secure cell, where she is greeted by an unknown woman. She informs Frances that it is her new home. Present time, the villainess is still being held at Ravencroft under the supervision of Dr. Pazzo, who with undisguised pleasure brings her a newspaper. It reports that the murderer Cletus Kasady, the Frances's lover, may be sentenced to a death penalty as a result of the investigation. While Barrison suffers gravely from the news, Kasady is already behind bars. Detective Mulligan turns to journalist Eddie Brock for help in the investigation, as he is the only person that the infamous villain agrees to talk to. Many bodies of Cletus's victims have not yet been found, and the reporter, who has lost his former glory, would also benefit from participating in the investigation. Eddie meekly agrees to participate in the case, unlike his alien partner Venom, who tries to rip the assertive detective's head off. He wasn't satisfied with the man's orderly tone during the conversation. Eddie Brock heads to California's oldest prison, San Quentin, where Cletus Kasady is being held. The insane serial killer offers the journalist a deal. In exchange for information about Cletus's victim's burial place, Eddie must print a short poem of his in the newspaper.
Print it. And what's mine is yours.
The journalist agrees, and having recorded the psychopath's message, is about to leave, when suddenly Venom's voice, never one to keep silent, draws Brock's attention to Cletus's cell walls. The eerie pictures are scratched there. Eddie reports to Detective Mulligan that no information can be extracted from Kasady before the murderer's mysterious poem is published in the newspaper. Back home, Venom produces the psychopath's wall drawings on paper with Eddie's hands and tries to hint on how to solve the case, but disappointed in the host's mental abilities, takes matters into his own hands. He reproduces another drawing from memory, which matches exactly with the landscape of Rodeo City Beach. Soon the police and medical team find all the buried bodies of the ruthless killer's victims, and the high-profile case is reported all over the media, infuriating Detective Mulligan. Being under public pressure, the governor of California decides to sentence Cletus to death, a decision that Frances and the insane killer himself learn about immediately. In his apartment, Eddie Brock listens to the news reports of his rise back to the city's hero. Only Venom, who can't wait to bite the heads off of criminals like in the old days and wishes to escape from the journalist's cramped apartment, is unhappy with what has happened. He trashes the apartment, letting his feelings run wild.
I cannot live like this anymore. I'm starving!
Eddie responds by offering to gobble up the chickens Sonny and Cher, which the offended symbiote refuses to do, calling them his friends. Later, he disappears, returning their shared body to Brock's control, who nevertheless gives in to the pressure of the hungry symbiote and goes to the store. Eddie goes to see Miss Chen, one of the few people who know about the journalist's voracious companion. However, it turns out that the chocolate the symbiote feeds on has run out, and the partners have to switch to Plan B, giving free rein to the ravenous monster. Brock allows Venom to devour the chickens at the chicken farm. The satiated symbiote heads home, coughing out chicken feathers, lamenting about how useless his body is, and accusing Eddie of burying their talent. While Venom is bouncing around on the rooftops, Eddie's phone suddenly rings. The symbiote abruptly disappears, leaving the journalist hanging on the ledge of a high-rise. It turns out that Anne, Eddie's ex-girlfriend, whom he is still in love with, is calling. Anne says that she wants to tell him some important news and asks him to meet. The next evening, Brock goes to see Anne. Eddie takes a seat at the table and begins an awkward conversation during which the girl reveals the news and shyly shows him the ring her new fiancé, Dr. Dan Lewis, has given her. Frustrated, Eddie congratulates Anne, while the Venom inside him throws a violent tantrum for missing his beloved. While Brock is listening to the mournful howl, Anne notices the look on Eddie's face and realizes that the symbiote is still with him. But the reporter lies in response.
He's dead.
I am playing dead right now.
Anne doesn't believe him, and turning to the symbiote, asks the alien to take care of Eddie. The caring symbiote does just that, and the next morning, he diligently makes breakfast for Eddie, who is grief-stricken by his lost love, melting down after the severe emotional turmoil. Venom also picks up Brock's mail, among which he unexpectedly finds a letter from Cletus Kasady, who has been sentenced to death. In the letter, the murderer invites Eddie to see him off on his last journey, and after some thought, Brock decides to go back to San Quentin. Eddie catches Cletus at his last meal, wishing to gather sensational material. The journalist turns on his tape recorder. The perpetrator begins the conversation with some distant, uncomplicated remarks about how similar their fate is, but then proceeds to swear viciously at Eddie, which the latter patiently listens to, unlike the fiery symbiote, who pounces on the guy after another insult. As a result of the confrontation, Kasady manages to bite Brock's hand. Surprised by the taste of his blood, the criminal suddenly realizes that it is not human. The hero walks away, but a drop of unusual blood remains on the psycho's face. Upon returning home, the partners have a fight. Eddie blames the short-tempered alien for the attack that has made him lose the opportunity to publish sensational material. Eddie reminds the capricious symbiote of all his antics that have caused them troubles. A minor altercation gradually escalates into a heated argument, and the offended Venom mercilessly smashes up Brock's apartment, who is powerless to resist the alien. He uses one last forbidden trick against the symbiote, the loud alarm noise, which the symbiote cannot stand. After separating from Eddie, Venom jumps out the window in search of a different host, using which he delivers one last crushing blow to his former partner. The symbiote smashes his favorite motorcycle and then escapes by jumping from one passerby to another. The day of Cletus Kasady's execution arrives. He is prepared to receive a lethal injection in a special chamber, giving the criminal the right to have his final word. The executor sets the sentence in motion, and the poisonous green liquid is injected into Cletus's veins through a catheter. Suddenly, the villain's blood pushes the poison out, and he himself abruptly opens his eyes, and his entire body begins to shake, with massive red tentacles sprouting out of it. The isolated cell breaks, and out of the darkness and dust appears the many-armed, bloodthirsty monster Carnage, who proves invulnerable to bullets. After wreaking havoc in the prison, he breaks free. After a devastating breakup with his partner, Eddie Brock tries to clean up his apartment. He kicks out the symbiote's friends, Sonny and Cher, leaving them in a city park. In the evening, he relaxes on the couch in front of a new TV and suddenly finds out that Cletus Kasady has escaped. At the same moment, a detective appears on the doorstep of his apartment. Mulligan interrogates Eddie with suspicion about his last meeting with the criminal, after which the man managed to escape, and without getting any answers from Brock, leaves, advising him to go into hiding for a while. Eddie, who also realizes he's in danger, thinks what to do next. He tries to reason from the perspective of his former partner, whose help he now misses badly in such a critical situation. In the meantime, the runaway alien is out partying, jumping from one victim to the next one and enjoying the fun and attention of the crowd. He attracts everyone with his extraordinary appearance, which drunken youths mistake for a costume. In the meantime, the freed Cletus Kasady is just as happy to be on the loose. After stealing a Ford Mustang, he and his evil partner set out to find a certain person, who is not Eddie at all. Brock himself, being now in danger, after correlating some facts about the perpetrator, finds a clue and goes to the abandoned St. Estes orphanage, where the murderer had spent his childhood. After exploring the grounds, he finds a tree with initials carved on it, which he immediately tells Mulligan about. And it turns out that the detective knows the name behind them, Frances Barrison.
That's impossible, Eddie. She's dead. I shot her.
But it is she who Cletus Kasady is now looking for. The villain accesses the internet, and with the help of his alien sidekick, discovers classified information about her whereabouts. He immediately goes to Ravencroft, where he makes a spectacular appearance in his lover's cell and rescues Frances from the trap, while the invincible Carnage carries them both to freedom. The couple, guarded by the alien, get into a chase with the police, who suffer losses because of the enraged monster. Frances, now at large, also decides to use her power. She draws her chest full of air and deafens the area with a piercing scream that unexpectedly undermines the power of the alien, who cannot stand loud noises. Cletus asks his beloved not to repeat this prank while they're hiding from the police. Detective Mulligan, arriving at Ravencroft, finds Francis Barrison's destroyed cell. Upon returning to the station, he summons Eddie Brock, who had given him the lead earlier. The detective demands that the hero lay out everything he's not telling him, including the monster that all the eyewitnesses to Kasady's crimes have been talking about. At this point, Brock realizes that a drop of his blood has spawned a new symbiote. Instead of answering questions, Eddie asks permission to make a phone call. Soon, his ex-fiancée Anne arrives, whom he begs to track down Venom. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the girl agrees, and after Brock's instructions, first goes to Miss Chin's store. Anne manages to get the touchy symbiote to talk, but he stubbornly refuses to help his former partner. With the help of some flattery, the cunning girl manages to persuade the stubborn creature.
Let's go save that asshole.
The alien immediately sets out to rescue Brock from the station. After making him apologize, he reunites with him to defeat evil and asks Anne and her fiancé to leave town until this is over. Brock searches for Cletus to no avail, but suddenly receives a call from Dan, who tells him that the villains have captured Anne and dragged her to their wedding at Grace Cathedral, where they are waiting for Eddie Brock and Venom to show up. Deeply in love, Cletus Kasady and Francis Barrison are having their grim wedding, which the kidnapped Detective Mulligan and Anne are also witnesses to. When the Holy Father gives the word to those who oppose the marriage, Venom bursts into the cathedral. The two symbiotes clash in a fierce battle. Carnage clearly has the advantage, and the villain manages to rough up the symbiote. Before finally finishing him off, Carnage is going to execute Anne right in front of him and carries the defenseless girl to the roof of the cathedral. Venom, exhausted, climbs after him and gets to the highest spire of the tower, from where he attacks the monster, piercing his head with a sharp pole. Grabbing Anne from the hands of the killer, he carefully lowers her to safety. Gathering the last of his strength, he rushes into a decisive battle, but finds himself unable to withstand the powerful blows of the enemy. Suddenly, he spots Francis on the roof, using his last chance to overpower his opponent. He throws the villainess off the bell tower, making her release her most powerful scream before dying. The tower collapses, and the enemies fly down. Venom manages to reunite with Eddie before he crashes to the floor, but Carnage, having lost his host, rolls helplessly on the floor and immediately becomes prey to the enemy. Venom enjoys biting off the head of the much-hated Cletus as well. The police immediately arrive on the scene. After letting Anne and her fiancé go, Brock and Venom, who are wanted, are forced into hiding. Later, the inseparable partners escape to a tropical island for a vacation before finding a new place for themselves in a world where people need a defender. For now, however, the characters are resting carefree in an old cabin by the ocean, lazily watching a popular TV series. Instead of this activity, Venom suddenly offers Eddie to show him a small part of the collective knowledge and sensations accumulated in the symbiote's mind over 80 billion years. Eddie agrees, but the situation suddenly gets out of Venom's control. Reality around both of them is suddenly transformed along with the TV show. Instead of a soap opera, the Daily Bugle news anchor reports that Spider-Man is a new threat to humanity. So the partners accept the challenge to destroy the enemy. As always, you'll find the name of the movie in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments. What do you think the meeting of Venom and Spider-Man from the parallel universes will lead to? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next awesome retelling.